Welcome, everyone, to the Salesforce for Nonprofits and Arkus webinar and fireside chat today in honor of World Sight Day. World Sight Day is observed on the second Thursday of October annually. It's a global event meant to draw attention to blindness and vision impairment. I am joined today by three fantastic guests who work in this space, and we are going to have a conversation today about the mission of their organizations and how their organizations are leveraging technology in support of the constituents and the communities that they serve. So I am thrilled to have Alicia, Frank, and Andre here today. And we're going to jump right in, and I am going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and to please share a little bit about your organization's mission, how you and your organizations recognize sight-related days of awareness during this month of October, and how you deliver on your mission for the rest of the year, whether it's with World Sight Day, White Cane Day, or some other fashion in which you honor this work. We are glad you're here today. And I'm going to just jump right in. So if I may, I'd like to ask Alicia, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization, we'd be grateful.
Sure. Thank you, Sterrin. And thank you, Arkus, and just for the opportunity. I'm thrilled to be here. So I'm the Chief Mission Officer for the East Texas Lighthouse for the Blind. We also have a manufacturing division called Horizon Industries. We have been in business since 1976, originally created to be an employment source for people who are blind. We have had quite a journey from then to where we are doing national training from our, little bitty small town there in Texas. We really exist to empower the blind, whatever that means for them. We meet them where they are, and we have definitely seen growth in our programs and our reach and our impact, embracing technology. So I look forward to hearing everybody's stories on the call today. Going to the celebration days. October is a big month for kind of blindness awareness. Every year we do a big celebration for White Cane Day. This year we're doing it community facing, so we're going to kind of do a march, and the mayor's going to be there. It's a big deal in my small town. And then we also usually do a public facing event for National Disability Employment Awareness Month as well, kind of grouped in. So I think for those of us that work in the low vision space, awareness is very important for what we do. Just because blindness is not, percentage-wise, statistically, it's maybe not as visible as some of the other disabilities. And so anytime that we can educate that blindness is a spectrum and it's not always really apparent in the abilities and just the talents of those that are blind, it's a great opportunity for us. So I really appreciate you guys to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you, Alicia. Andre, how about you? Up next.
Hi, I'm Andre Lukatsky. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Hadley. Hadley is what we call ourselves now. Used to be called the Hadley School for the Blind from about 1920 until about 2012 or so. Then we rebranded to the Hadley Institute for the Blind and Visually Impaired. And now we're just known as Hadley. We are, I guess the best way to describe our organization is we're a learning destination for those who live with vision loss, their family members, and professionals in the field. We do not charge for our services. Our services are completely free, and all of our services are distant in nature. So it used to be Braille through the mail back since 1920s, and now it's online. It's still via the mail and via our telephony system. So we help people where they are, and it's just in time, very targeted learning that we deliver through these distance education methods.
Fantastic. And then last but certainly not least, Frank.
Hi, everybody. So Frank Lombardo. Don't know if we've bumped into each other in my 10 years with CNIB, but I am the VP of IT and Digital Ecosystems. don't know what that means every day, but I am responsible traditionally for IT, procurement, as well as now the contact center and our new travel department. It's really exciting. We're developing travel services for vision loss. CNIB, you may know, is a 100-plus-year-old organization that serves all blind and low vision Canadians across all our provinces and 50-some-odd offices. So we are the biggest one-stop shop for all things vision loss in Canada, including more recently our guide dog program, our Smart Life Centers, which are Best Buys for the blind, is the way I like to sort of coin it. It's a very exciting place to work. We're doing a lot of exciting things, and for Salesforce is the foundation of all that work that we do now. Everything from social enterprise to our camp up in the Muskokas to our guide dog program. Salesforce does it all. That's why I'm here.
Well, you've all teed up one of my first questions very nicely. And first of all, I do want to acknowledge that while we are having this conversation in October, it goes without saying that every single day, each of you in the organizations that you represent are serving this community day in and day out, and we remain grateful to all of you and your teams for doing that. I think it's interesting, a couple of things that each of you said in your introductions leads me to jump off in this conversation about unique challenges. So something that Alicia said, Andre said, and Frank said in your introduction, what are some of the unique challenges that you and your organizations encounter related to your mission and the stakeholders you serve when you think about leveraging technology? So I say this, Frank, because you just mentioned phones, for example.
So I'll kick off because I've got a few things that I'm dealing with right now. And I just want to call out that our organization, 30% of our workforce, to the tune of probably 120 plus staff members, are community members. They are people with vision loss. And so while we can talk about our participants, it's hard not to speak to the staff experiences as well, because what I am frustrated with daily is just the lack of commitments from most enterprise class manufacturers of software technologies that really either don't want to or are unable to, for whatever reason, participate in making the things that they sell, the products and services they sell, accessible. And I say that sincerely. It is frustrating. It can be very frustrating at times because I have to take care of my staff. And when we put things forward, it's very difficult for us to choose the same enterprise quality technologies that exist because we simply can't. We cannot put something forward that is not going to be usable. So that's a constant struggle. And there are some organizations that do it incredibly well and they have commitments to it at their core. And there are other organizations that want to do well, but they're challenged with retrofitting what they do. And then there are, unfortunately, those organizations that just don't see the return on investment that they or their shareholders might expect for the efforts that need to be taken. And so I have those conversations. It feeds the competitive side of my personality. I do like to fight when the fight is a good fight. And so it is interesting, but that's the greatest challenge that we deal with on a daily basis.
I'm going to toss this back to you, Alicia, just in terms of something we talked about before we got started today, in terms of what your organization is seeing in that same regard and how you're walking towards and embracing technology with the work that you're doing in that regard and what you're seeing and how it's helping.
Sure. So one of the things that Frank actually said, I was shaking my head at almost everything he was saying, is, when he brought up cell phones. So when we're talking about our clients, which very similar to Frank, our mission is not just to serve the blind community, but to do that through employment. And so 50% of our company are blind or visually impaired. We have someone blind in almost every single department of our company. And so anytime we look at our clients are also our employees and back and forth. But one of the things that we see in our community facing department is that we try to do as much as possible with one piece of technology, right? Juggling multiple things, and you have the older systems, and then the phones are so accessible these days, but many of the people that we see that really need that training are the older generation. And sometimes they're not the first to accept the smartphone, and they don't need that. When just little things like knowing what Siri will do within that one device, the magnification, the OCR, the maps, you name it, they are so accessible. So that's a little bit of a gap that we see. And then, of course, you know, we have a whole workforce, and like I said, every single department. So we have blue collar jobs in the manufacturing division, and then we go all the way up to, you know, VPs, and there's many CEOs in my role that are also blind. So anytime we are looking at a new product or a new machine, a partner for our items, how big is that screen? What kind of adaptations can we do to make sure that we are making that employment still accessible as well?
So, Alicia, I want to piggyback off of something you just said. You mentioned aging population and struggles with technology. Well, it's not just struggles with technology. So Hadley's current target audience are adults with age-related vision loss, because they are the most underserved group of all of the individuals with vision loss in this country and in the world, because you know, they don't have the services in schools and universities, and adult rehab is not really targeting their services to seniors. So combined with that struggle with technology is what makes Hadley's service delivery extremely challenging, and leads us to explore some interesting technical solutions. So part of our mission is personalized learning opportunities, and really trying to meet our potential clients where they are. So that really brings that challenge of designing systems that are not just accessible, but are also intuitive and fully usable, because oftentimes we see that the two are not equal. So, you know, we do that through a great deal of user testing. We have what we call Hadley advisors, and it's a fairly large group of our clients, our learners, who we constantly stay in touch with, and we invite to review prototypes, get a glimpse at new features that we're considering developing, and we always get that community input on pretty much everything that we put out there for our community. So you know, that's a big part of how we build our systems for our users, specifically community users.
So let me jump in, let me piggyback on that. I thank you, each of you, for that very obviously informed response. And of course, you know, it's interesting, you know, of course your workforce represents the communities that you serve as well. I'm wondering, would you have any piece of advice for other organizations who are perhaps not as wholly committed to working with folks that have vision loss, but also are, you know, committed to inclusion and committed to having people with vision loss in their workforce? What would be some advice you might have for those organizations to look at technology or other enhancements to their environment in order to support those kinds of employees? Anybody?
I'd like to take back. Sure. So I think that oftentimes we operate with antiquated notions about things in general. And I think that very specifically, the notion of being able to accommodate people with vision loss in the workplace is an arduous and expensive task. And I think that every day that passes, we get further and further away from those notions. As a matter of fact, I'd suggest that the past 10 years has really driven us away from that idea that it is expensive and arduous. It's very easy to accommodate someone with vision loss. And I look at our Come to Work program, where we take individuals that want to re-enter the workforce, that used to be in the workforce, or that are ready to enter the workforce, you know, out of post-secondary, and they have the technologies at their fingertips through Microsoft Office, through the iPhone applications. There's very little that has to be done. There might be some environmental considerations, and I mean, we offer services around that, and other organizations offer services around that. But it is no longer the day where a company has to buy $5,000 Braille displays, and they have to. Everything has to be painstakingly made accessible for a one individual. Those days just don't exist anymore, and they're getting further and further away.
I want to piggyback on top of that, Frank. I had read a statistic and I looked it up right before this call so that I could include it. A 2020 study was done by Job Accommodations Network, and 50% of the people that responded reported that accommodations actually cost nothing. The rest of the people that responded said that it averaged about $500. Now, are there instances in which you are going to need someone to come in and do some scripting? If you have a proprietary system, you're going to have to let someone in to kind of see what your system looks like. But 9 times out of 10, it can be figured out. And, we as humans have been creative about all kinds of things since the beginning, right? And so one of the things we really encourage our people is just be curious, right? Many times these applicants, they have the technology figured out. They know exactly what they need. They know how to work around it. And they're just really need to be evaluated for their skill and what they bring to the job. And normally they can handle the technology. I know, many agencies like my own will partner with businesses in town and will actually cover the cost of something. So let's say that someone does need a device that's a couple of $100s. We will back them. We just pay for that. In reality, it shouldn't be that hard for a business to cover it, but if it's going to be a barrier, we'll step in and we'll work with their IT department. We offer IT services. We say all the time, we're in the business of removing barriers and creating opportunities. And so just be curious before making judgments and assumptions is what I would say.
Yeah, and I just want to add that so many mainstream companies are building accessibility into their products. I would love to see more do that, but there's so many big names, anything from just Office applications. Frank, you mentioned Microsoft Office. It's the de facto standard in Office technology. It's very accessible. You have very accessible online conferencing systems, databases, things like payroll systems. There's many vendors out there who provide very accessible, very usable systems. It could also mean that certain businesses, certain organizations will have in their current toolbox things that are not accessible, and perhaps they might need to be adapted, but oftentimes, as Alicia, you were mentioning, it's not an unsurmountable obstacle. So Hadley has traditionally been employing many folks with disabilities, not just visual impairments, and we've been able to accommodate all of those that we've employed. So if organizations want to do that, they absolutely can.
So with that, so you sort of set the table stakes, and you've talked a little bit about how your organizations, what you're doing and how you're doing it. Let's get into the technology part of it. Let's get into that piece of the conversation. So how are your organizations using technology then to deliver on the mission? And then this is a two-parter question on that. So how are you using technology to deliver on the mission? And then how have any of your changes or choices in your technology supported your growth, particularly your growth and or your continued operations in business, particularly over the last couple of years? So what are you using? How does that look? Talk a little bit about that.
I'll start on that one, Sterrin. So before I came to the Lighthouse, I was over the customer service, order fulfillment, inside sales operations team of a national educational publishing company. We used NetSuite, so I was used to data, right? I had all the data I needed, and I came into this little bitty small nonprofit. Our impact is large, but size, we're kind of small, and I was starved for data. we were reporting, I think it was like the number of hours we did training, and I was like, but what are we doing, and what's the impact, and how do we use that data? And so I think over the last couple of years, we've really kind of evolved to, it's one thing to just enter your data somewhere. It's another thing, like, why are you doing it, and what decisions are going to be made from that data? And so we've done a couple of systems on our client services side. And then recently I began looking at Salesforce. And what started it was I actually saw an article that Salesforce had put out in like 2018 telling companies how to be accessible. And I said, okay, that's who we want to work with, right? Because any program that we can implement to, whether it's running our business from the manufacturing side or whether it's the community side, if I can train my employees in this one system that affects multiple different areas of my business, then I can essentially be a training ground for the confidence and the skills that they need. And we know that Salesforce is a marketable skill and desirable. And so that then lets me not only run my business successfully and keep people employed that are blind because it's accessible, but then train that skill and send them out in the community as well to be successful. So our ERP system, being a manufacturer, we have an ERP, we have a CRM, we have all those things. And it is accessible, but it's not super accessible. And so when I begin to look at Salesforce, I really see Salesforce as a portal into the other systems that may not be accessible. So, we decide how we push and pull our data. And if our people who are blind or visually impaired can interface only with Salesforce, they don't even have to deal with the ERP that's not, maybe the most friendly. So that's kind of how we've evolved, and we're kind of right in the middle of it. But I'm excited about that combination of, it makes sense for my business, being a federal contractor and having that revenue model. It makes sense business wise, but then it also makes sense in empowerment, empowering people to learn a new skill to then go out and take that with them wherever they go.
That sounds like a trailblazer story in the making, if I've ever heard one. Absolutely. Frank, you were nodding your head as Alicia was talking. Did you want to pile on there and just talk a little bit about how you're?
Yeah, no, it's great stuff. Technology, look, virtualization changed the game for us. We recognize that people with vision loss can't travel. It's a big thing. And we were very much a brick and mortar institution, and we don't like that word anymore for 100 years, right? And so really with COVID, and I'm looking forward to the day I don't have to say that word anymore, but it forced us to virtualize, and all of a sudden our program participation went through the roof because people had access to those sorts of things. And so all the registration is handled through Salesforce. All the participation is done through your standard virtualization platforms like Zoom and Teams and all that other good stuff, all very accessible. And now we have people on the West Coast that are interested in attending a program that's run out of the East Coast, and those barriers are gone. And so, when other organizations maybe had to withdraw a bit, we were able to expand, and our numbers are phenomenal. I don't have them, but I love it when the program people's like, we just went up 150% on this new program. And that's what it's all about. Like, technology is about enablement. And I think we've lost that as things become more commoditized. But here we are, just showing that we can bring people together like it's supposed to, and have them participate and be included like it's supposed to. It's been really great.
Andre, do you have some thoughts on that? About how
Absolutely, Sterrin. So I've been at Hadley going on 23 years, so I've seen a thing or two. So in my tenure with Hadley, we've gone from green screen terminals to cloud services, right? So in the last couple of years, which is interesting, we launched our new platform, which we call Hadley 2.0, in 2020. So it's been pretty much exactly 2 years. And this was the platform that we migrated from our legacy in-house built database system, content management system, learning management system, to a new Drupal-based web platform that uses Salesforce for its back end that lets us track all kinds of online engagements as well as offline engagements, because remember, Hadley meets people where they are. You don't even need to have a computer or know how to use a computer to use our services. You're still in that same database with the rest of our learners. We can see what your preferences are. We can see what learning you've engaged with, what your desires might be. So it really gives us the flexibility to build on that platform, and we're integrating that back end with other solutions. We're building our telephony platform that will allow those who can't use a computer to call in to get their learning content, because anybody can use a phone. And again, that can integrate with Salesforce as well. So having that amount of flexibility and quick development time is just unparalleled. It really brought Hadley into the 21st century. And we are integrating with marketing solutions. So we use Marketing Cloud. And there's lots more for us to learn there, but it really gives us that data connection that's absolutely immediate, and analytics that we couldn't even dream of getting before.
So I've heard each of you say in different ways that the gift of the technology and of the platform is really about the data that you now have access to, both in service of the programs that you're providing to the community, but also in the interest of being able to measure and report your impact. And so it's both ends. It's both internally supportive and helps you really operate more efficiently, and it also helps you, pivot and react to what your market or what your communities have in terms of demand, whether it's around education or access to other services. So really, it's the power of having that data to make decisions about resources, people, programs, impact, et cetera. That's really the game changer here, which is, that's what we proselytize all the time, obviously, in terms of how we're all moving forward. Let me throw this question out to all of you. How does your strategy for the next few months or the next year ahead compare to what your strategy was over the course of the last couple of years in lockdown? What were some of the learnings you had coming out of the pandemic, and as you look ahead, that may be informing the path ahead for your organizations? Or how are you personally thinking about it as leaders? I guess would also be a really interesting question.
I can tell you, we're feeling pretty fearless right now. I mean, what we just went through showed us that we could accomplish the objectives of our strategic plans under the worst of conditions, socially and economically. And I'm just happy to be part of an organization that has this sort of fearlessness to them now. The things we've accomplished over the past 2, 5, 10 years, with technology enabling a lot of that, we're just not going to stop, and our ambition is grown, and we're looking forward to some of the things we're about to kick off, because it's going to be big. Yeah, and we have the foundations to do it now.
Yeah, I'm with Frank. I think that this pandemic and everything that we went through has shown that we can do anything. If we could pull off launching our new platform in the middle of the pandemic, tripling our registrations, sky's the limit, because we have the systems in place that allow for that exponential growth.
I would say the same. We were in a little bit of a different boat. We were launching our national training programs right before COVID hit. So my AT team was talking with Zoom. There were some kinks in the accessibility of the breakout rooms, and we were talking with them. So our technology programs were the one thing that were ready to go. before really COVID even hit. So we did have to adapt really quickly on like our children's programs. We did art, we shipped them art supplies and did art together on Zoom. And you know, my whole team had to pivot really fast. And so I would say exactly what the guy said. I mean, the sky's the limit. And again, it goes back to being curious and creative. And, you know, our world is no different. You know, other nonprofits, large or small, we're all tasked every day with doing more with less. And I think that that's kind of just what the story is. With us adding Salesforce, it kind of initially started with growing our our donor base and our volunteers and just the general awareness to get clients referred to us. And now, which is kind of my side of the business, and it's made it all the way across to our strategic plan on our sales side now, because our sales team, who is selling to the federal government and some commercial contracts as well, didn't have anything. So it went from I wanted it because it was accessible and would help me on that side to now it's going to fuel the growth that we have planned in our strategic plan this year.
Well, it's interesting. I just, again, at the risk of reflecting back to you, what I've heard is fearless resilience and relentless curiosity, I think, are the three things, the three themes that each of you have brought up, whether it's, again, in service of your clients and your customers, or in service of the technology and supporting your staff to move through a very uncertain time and giving them the tools that they needed to grow the programs, 10x, to create an opportunity, Frank, as you said, for people to not have to be geographically accessible to the learning and the tools and the things that they want to use, all the way through to imagining, Alicia, as you described, coming into a situation where you had no data to now having data, and now you have other departments and sales departments wanting the same tool and the same data to be actually able to make those decisions. So it's really, again, fearless. I love the idea that you're coming into this next phase of whatever we're moving into next, with a notion of fearless resilience and insatiable curiosity. I'll take, relentless or insatiable curiosity in terms of what else can we do with the power of these tools in our hands to support the people that we serve day in and day out. So thank you so much for that. I will say we're getting close on time here, so I'm going to popcorn around and say, I'm going to ask you, instead of doing David Letterman's top 10 things that or advice you would give, if there were a piece of advice you could give to an organization considering or that is curious about leveraging technology in support of their mission, whether it's for fundraising, marketing, programs, learning, sales, whatever the case may be, what would be your one piece of advice as someone walks towards that and gets curious about that based on your experience with Salesforce and going through this process? Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
I'm going to start with you, Andre, this time.
Sure. I would say talk to your peers, talk to your peer organizations, ask what their experience has been, what worked, what didn't. In the nonprofit world, we're happy to talk. We're happy to share, what works. When we were looking for a new platform and looking for partners, looking for solutions, I called Frank and I said, Frank, I heard you guys went to Salesforce. How is that working out for you? Right, and here we are. So that would be my number one advice. Talk to your peers.
Mine would be to really talk to your teams and understand the value of what you're losing by not saying yes and taking that journey, right? New technology is not always fun, and it's sometimes scary, and it's not always super positive when you're going through it. But I think you have to just understand what you can really gain from it, and your teams are going to be the ones that really know that and what they would love to be able to do if they had the time or they had the tool. Again, I guess for me, my theme really is curiosity, right? What if we could do this? What if we could do this in half the time? What if a system would talk to that system? If we're not asking those questions, then I think we're missing the boat.
So they led with the two that I often lead with, so I'm going to struggle a bit, but focus on the outputs and the outcomes that you're looking for. Technology in and of itself isn't going to do it for you. And sometimes the technology isn't going to do it at all for you. We spend a lot of time talking to our stakeholders, the people we serve. What do they want to get out of something? We're about to embark on a big Experience Cloud initiative to start to open ourselves up more and more to our constituents, and we need to hear it from them. What do they want out of this? And some organizations do that really well, and others do not. So aside from the number one and number two good pieces of advice that were said, I think that that's important, is just making sure that it's not a technology project. You know, it's not a finance project. It's not a philanthropy project. It is an enablement project. It is an outcomes project. At the end of the day, we know exactly what we're trying to pull out of the hat here. And yeah, there are plenty of technologies to help you do that.
Well, I think something, you know, to put a bow on that, I think what's interesting about what all three of you said, which is part of the reason, actually, after a 30-year career in the nonprofit sector, I ended up joining Salesforce, is really that it's a journey. The innovation is a journey and not a destination. Yep. And, you know, Andre, something that you said is, and no one walks that path alone without asking for help or advice. And to your point, Alicia, involving your teams in that regard, it's not something that the VP of IT or the CIO does in isolation from then to you know, bring your point home, Frank. It's about the business. The technology enables the very human effort of learning or of sales or of service or of education, etc. And it's about how we do that together, again, with Alicia's theme of curiosity, that really enables us to have that courage to do it. And I think one of the most interesting things that you've said today is, can we as a sector afford not to anymore? And I think, you know, I've gotten to know each of you enough to say that I think we all agree that we can't afford not to get curious about it and think about how technology can really enable our work in different, new, and exciting ways, whether it's to scale or whether it's just to measure and to do our work a little more seamlessly and more efficiently so that we can serve more people. And that's really the point that we, you know, that's why I show up every day for work, and I'm sure that's why most of you show up in terms of how, you know, how can we have that impact and help others? So thank you for that. So as we reach the end of our time, last thing is, how can our audience find out more about your organizations and support and get curious about the work that you do if they would like to support you during this month of October or any time during the year? So if you'd like to do here's your commercial as we close out our time together today. Let's start with Andre.
Well, we charge nothing for our services. So anyone can come and learn with Hadley. It's hadley.edu. That's all you need to know. We have hundreds of workshops on dozens of different topics, from technology to living with vision loss to business, employment, you name it. And lastly, if you were curious about learning Braille as a sighted individual, we have workshops for you as well. So come to us, hadley.edu.
Thanks, Andre. Alicia.
Okay, so we're doing some rebranding. So on Facebook, we are East Texas Lighthouse for the Blind. On LinkedIn, we are East Texas Lighthouse for the Blind. On the web, we are TYLER lighthouse.org. Don't judge us based on our website. We're getting a new one, speaking of technology and moving forward.
And it's a journey, not a destination. Always a work in progress. And Frank, how do we get in touch with you?
Well, I'm always happy to get new invites on LinkedIn when people reach out and they sit there and say, hey, we want to know how to do this in the way of accessibility or inclusion or whatever the case might be. So I'm happy to get those. CNIB.ca is where you find out about everything that we do. And I think aside from the things that we do for people with vision loss, we have huge amounts of both fee-for-service and non-fee-for-service ways of assisting organizations with getting people with vision loss in to work with them with making their environments accessible. We're in hospitals, we're in government buildings, we're in educational facilities, making these, we're on the street level, making communities accessible. I mean, we can do all that stuff. And so anybody out there that wants to pick up the mantle of accessibility and inclusion can find what they need on cnib.ca or hit me up on LinkedIn.
Super. And Alicia, your audio cut out when you said your new website name, so I'm going to ask you to say it one more time.
Oh, my audio today. It's Tyler. That's the name of our town. Tyler lighthouse.org.
Okay, tylerlighthouse.org. Okay, we got that. And then last but certainly not least, our friends from the American Foundation for the Blind were not able to join us today, but they wanted to wish the three of you and our entire audience the best as we move through October. And so with that, I thank all of you for your time today. Thanks for being troopers with all the questions and really sharing your stories and the missions of your organizations. We appreciate all that you do, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Sterrin.
Thank you.